Welcome to the podcast, Ashley and Fay. So excited to have you guys here today. I'd like to start by asking you a bit about your background and why you both started incorporating more plant-based foods into your diet. So Fay, I'll start with you.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me. So I started incorporating plant-based foods into my diet about 8 years or so ago. I was diagnosed with what's known as a mitochondrial disorder. So for those that aren't familiar with that, it's basically your mitochondria is similar to your furnace in your home. It's an energy source for your body. And being diagnosed with a mitochondrial disorder, I was lacking in energy. It affected my overall nervous and muscular system in little ways that were noticeable for me, enough for me to seek medical attention. And it took about a year to a year and a half to get diagnosed with that. But basically what it meant was I had to start incorporating high proteins and foods into my diet that would help produce more energy because my body wasn't able to do that on its own. Now, the common solution to that is just eating a lot of meat, eating a lot of protein. I was actually prescribed creatine powders. Now, I knew that this wasn't a sustainable lifestyle, constantly eating meat like 10 times a day. So I had to make a change for myself, for my health. I started digging into research and realized that going or incorporating more plant-based diets would support this building of energy that I needed to do. And of course, everything in moderation, everything in making, everything balanced within my diet, not necessarily cutting out meat completely. So I'm not vegan, but incorporating a more cleaner source of protein from plants would support my overall health and well-being in a way that I was able to sustain it and feel good about it. So that's where my journey started.
But what can I just ask you, why not dairy?
So I've had a dairy intolerance for many, many years. So since I was a teen, I knew that my body didn't quite like dairy very much. So I knew I had to stay away from that just so that my tummy wouldn't be so upset all the time. But I knew also that plant-based foods were easier for me and my body to absorb and digest. So I stuck with that. I stuck with what I knew my body liked best.
Got it. Okay. And Ashley, what about you?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Esther. I appreciate it. And Faye, I didn't know all of that, so it was very interesting to hear the details about your story.
Yeah, thank you.
So my story specifically, I grew up in a small town in Indiana. I actually grew up on a beef farm. We raised Angus and Highland cattle for meat. So as you can imagine, meat and dairy were a very central part of my diet and my family's diet, and that's just how I grew up. And retrospectively, because of that, I struggled with a lot of GI issues. I had severe chronic constipation that really just was a huge, I don't want to say a debilitator, but it was just a huge distraction in my life. At the time, I didn't quite know that it was abnormal to be in the bathroom for hours at a time or only go once a week. So I was put on a lot of medications. I took a lot of suppositories, just kind of ebbed and flowed between the struggle of not using the restroom and then the opposite struggle of not using the restroom. So because of that, I became very passionate about nutrition, not necessarily because of my GI issues, but I really liked food and nutrition. And growing up on a farm, I loved the idea of having a farm to table type of lifestyle. And so I decided that I wanted to become a registered dietitian, just to kind of use that passion that I grew up with and kind of turn it into a career. And so I went to school to become a dietitian. And honestly, during that time, there wasn't a whole lot of emphasis put on using food and nutrition as a means to help prevent disease or help reverse disease. And so it really wasn't until after I graduated and took a harder look at my lifestyle and my diet and what was going on with my body internally that did I start looking into plant-based eating and that sort of thing. So that's kind of where my journey started. It came, after childhood issues of like chronic constipation. It came after becoming a registered dietitian, until I took a hard look myself at what I was doing and tried to make that connection between what I was putting in my mouth and how it was affecting my body.
I would have thought that going to school for nutrition, that would have been where you would have learned how to positively affect your GI issues. But you're saying that it wasn't until later.
No, it wasn't until later. And honestly, like, I didn't know any different when I was in school. I was like, okay, well, this is what I'm learning. This is what I'm going to be. This is what I'm going to do as a dietitian. And then it wasn't until I started doing my own research that I was like, oh, I actually never learned how to use food to heal my body. It was more of just like managing chronic disease, not much of an emphasis put on reversing chronic disease or help, kind of like what you were saying, Faye, like figuring out what works best for you and your body to help heal yourself. It's pretty crazy looking back. It's amazing because it's like we really have to do our own research because, we're our own personal advocates and what works best for us type of thing. So
right.
That's a really good follow-up, Faye. Yeah.
So how, for both of you, how did you go about educating yourself about plant-based foods? I'm sure some of the listeners are wondering, if they're going to start incorporating more plant-based foods into their diet, where do they start? Are there any resources that you found that have been very helpful or...
So for my medical condition in particular, I worked with a number of different medical practitioners to support what was going on because it's quite a rare disease. So each practitioner had their own thoughts about it, but I would consult each one about this source of energy that I needed and where I could get it from. And each practitioner, whether they were a holistic doctor or they were a nutritionist or they were a neuromuscular specialist or you name it, I've seen quite a few doctors. And I used them as a form of research first. I wanted to, pick their brains with the education that they had and the knowledge they had about nutrition as a whole. So that was my number one source. Second was obviously the internet. I think we all use it as a resource. And just, connecting with other people that had similar issues with energy levels and mitochondrial disorders, and then documentaries. I watched so many different documentaries in a span of like 2-3 years about how plants create energy and how they support your immune system and how they build strength and how they build muscle and all this good stuff. So I used a number of different routes and I'm sure I could go on and on about articles that I've read and just my own personal research that I've done too. But all in all, those were my top resources.
Okay. And what about you, Ashley?
Yeah, Faye, I really like what you said about connecting with other people who struggle with the same diagnoses that you did. I think that's so important because I feel like the more you talk about it, the more you find that other people are struggling with something similar. And you can kind of connect and bounce ideas off of each other and see what works best. I love that idea. And Faye, I'm along the same lines as you. I used the internet for a long time just to kind of figure out what was going on because I was taking over-the-counter medications and doing suppositories, and it just wasn't working. And I had to take a hard look at my lifestyle and be like, okay, I can continue down this path of taking medication, or I can do my own research, become my own advocate, and try and figure out what's going on because I just couldn't continue with all these GI issues. So, Say, along the same lines as you, I started Googling a bunch of stuff, and then that led me down all these rabbit holes, which led me to a bunch of documentaries, like Forks Over Knives, and then that led me to things like Vegucated, and it was like Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And then it just kind of it clicked in my head that there is a huge relationship between what we put in our bodies and how it affects what's going on inside internally. And so from there, just kind of taking a harder look at okay, well, maybe dairy isn't working for me. Maybe eating all this meat that I grew up on and was used to eating isn't quite working for me either. So through those documentaries and then just doing my own research, I slowly started transitioning into removing some of those things from my diet, specifically cow's milk and red meat, which I ate and drank a lot of growing up, and then just replacing those with more plant-based foods.
So once you started to introduce plant-based foods, what happened? Like how long did you see results? I'm assuming you did. And if you did, how long did it take to start to see those results?
So for me, I had almost immediate relief. I mean, I don't want to say it was a night and day difference, but it was definitely immediate when I started introducing more plant-based foods into my lifestyle, and especially with removing cow's milk and red meat from my diet. That had a huge impact on just how things were digesting, and, consistency in my bowel movements and, time in the bathroom, all that kind of stuff, and just how I was feeling overall. So immediately my energy levels improved. And like I said, my GI issues, although they weren't perfect, and I still had a lot of work to be done, I definitely saw the results almost immediately, which made me want to continue down the path. It was like that positive reinforcement where once the ball was rolling, I didn't really want to stop because I started feeling so good. And I never felt that way before. And I just had no idea that you could feel this good and that, you didn't have to dread going to the bathroom, that sort of thing. So it was super encouraging almost immediately for me.
It's really interesting to hear that because I could completely relate on so many different levels when you talk about meat in particular, because when I was first diagnosed, one of the number one suggestions was incorporating more meat into my diet. So when I started doing that, I also felt like I was dealing with so many washroom issues. Like I couldn't go for days, and that wasn't normal to me. And that also, caused me to seek more medical attention, which similarly sent me to, into these blank holes of not knowing what to do. So that plant-based diet and incorporating more plant-based foods really helped me, because when I ditched some of the red meat, especially, which was, high in all of this protein, which was supposed to be creating more energy for me, it was actually slowing down my digestion, which was causing more energy to be processing all this food that it was trying to get rid of. So for me, when I started incorporating more plants and seeing those changes, I started seeing them within, I would say, a few weeks. And that was more so on the digestive end of things. I also started seeing improvements in my skin, my hair, my nails, like all these other things that I didn't notice before, and maybe I didn't care about as much before. But noticing these changes was within, I would say, about 2-3 months. My acne going away, my digestion feeling better, my bloating completely being reduced. I felt so great, and I think that was about the 2 to 3 month mark for myself.
Wow, that's amazing. And in the journey, did you encounter any difficulties?
For myself, when I started introducing more plant-based foods, not necessarily, not difficulties per se with my body. I was seeing improvements with my body. The only thing I started noticing as a change was I was going to the grocery store more often. So for myself, before being used to purchasing maybe more meat, popping the meat in the freezer, so forth, and focusing on that kind of thing, I would go grocery shopping perhaps maybe once a week, and I thought that was enough for me. But when I started incorporating more fruits, veggies, plants, I was really adamant about buying fresh. I'm a fresh obsessed person altogether. So I was noticing that I was starting to go 2 to 3 times a week. And I had to learn how to adjust to that because I had to make it a priority. So that was a change for myself.
Right. And what about the people around you? Were they accepting of the changes that you were making to your diet, or are they sort of going, "Well, that's not going to work"?
Totally. So I had more people that were accepting of it. In particular, my husband loves fruits and vegetables. From the time I've met him, he's always been a huge veggie fan. So for him, he was all gung ho. He was like, yes, let's get these fruits and veggies in this fridge and support our health and well-being. But then I had some skeptics too. I had some family members more concerned than anything because they knew of my disorder. They knew how much protein I had to be consuming a day in order to support that part of my health. And they were concerned that perhaps I wasn't getting enough. Perhaps I did need to be eating red meat every day in order to make up for that energy that I didn't have naturally. So I had some skeptics for, maybe the first year or so, but it was a time for me to educate and advocate for myself. And through that, I actually noticed that I was really helping them learn. And they were even starting to incorporate more plant-based foods into their diet. And every time we'd go out, they would always, try and pick my brain about the latest article that I read or something else that I've been eating or a recipe that I've been developing. So it's been a great experience.
It's funny, people do come on board. I know for my family, I was the first one to start incorporating more plant-based foods into my diet. I don't think my husband ever tried quinoa before, for example, and now he asks for it. So people start to get into it also. I know, Ashley, did you have any difficulties when you were starting this journey for yourself?
Yeah, and I'm going to have to go back to what you were talking about too, Esther, with like family members getting involved, because I have a story about that. But yeah, kind of similar to Fay. Okay, I cannot keep going to the grocery store 3 to 5 times a week. Like, what is going on? Because it's such a new lifestyle, and it's like, you constantly have to be buying all this fresh produce, and it was just a process of learning, how to incorporate all these plant-based foods and make it sustainable and not going to the grocery store almost every day. So that was initially kind of a shock to me. It's just kind of learning how to plan, learning how to set myself up for the week so that I'm not having to go to and from the grocery all the time, stocking up on staples in the pantry and in the fridge, that sort of thing. So that was definitely a learning curve for me. Also, growing up the way I did, I was really scared, being from Indiana, now living in North Carolina, going back home and basically telling my family, I'm sorry, I don't eat my favorite dishes anymore. And just being kind of scared of what their response would be. But it was kind of similar to Fay, people become interested, they saw that I was feeling better and I was more energized. And I was just so passionate about this new way of eating that I was like, okay, what did you read? Or what is that quinoa dish that you just made type thing? So kind of similar to what you both are talking about. It's people have kind of a curiosity when they see that you're feeling good and you're making these changes, and it's not as terrible as it might look from the outside. So that was one. But so with my parents and everything, growing up on a cattle farm, for my birthday one year, I asked them to try plant-based eating for 90 days. I was like, I don't want any gifts. I don't want, anything. Just please try this way of eating for 90 days and just see how it goes. So they actually went from eating the same way I was eating, and cold turkey, day one, started eating plant-based. And I would say for that 90 days, and they say they were probably 90 to 95% plant-based. So they did a pretty remarkable job, living in a small town, in more of a rural area in Indiana, kind of incorporating more of a plant-based lifestyle into their lifestyle, essentially. And during that time, so we had them check their cholesterol and get a bunch of labs done before. And then we had them do it afterwards as well. And they both had an average of about 55-point drop in their total cholesterol. So it went from being in the low 200s to closer to 150. So I think when they saw those results, they were like, okay, maybe there is something to this way of eating, eating a few more plants might be a little beneficial. So it was really cool to see that. They also lost a little bit of weight without, changing their exercise routine. So again, it kind of goes back to that positive reinforcement. I would say now, this is probably 5 years now, I would say they're mostly plant-based, not fully, but I think because they had such good results initially, they felt good too, they wanted to continue with it. So kind of like what you were talking about, Faye, with like people being interested, in what's going on in your lifestyle.
That's amazing to see those results and the fact that your parents stuck with it too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. I will say I was kind of on them, checking in with them every week, seeing how it was going. And they also had some friends that kind of jumped on board too in their small town in Indiana. So that was really helpful. Like having that support system obviously makes a huge difference.
That's great. Just one about the numerous trips to the grocery store. What do you guys think about frozen fruits and vegetables to sort of help maybe reduce one of those trips in the week?
I love it. I love them all. I love buying frozen. I think it's just such a time saver. And I think it's also, in regards to quality, the quality is there. So frozen fruits and veggies are picked at their finest. So when it's frost frozen and brought to the grocery store and you thaw it out at home, you're getting a really tasty fruit or vegetable. You're not getting something that is perhaps not ripe or not ripe enough. One of my favorites in particular is raspberries. I think you save so much money, in particular buying frozen raspberries, and I buy them throughout the year, even in the summertime when they are fresh. I prefer buying a bag of frozen because I use them for smoothies anyway, so it doesn't matter whether they are fresh or frozen. And the organic ones too are such a good price when they're frozen, and they're so sweet. So that's just one of my favorites. I have quite a few, but I love it.
You've touched upon the price point, which is a criticism of plant-based eating, is the price point, and then some critics say it's quite expensive, so it can't be sustained by an average income earner. What do you have to say to that?
I would argue with that for sure. I'd put up a debate because I would say I'm about 70% plus plant-based. I still eat my seafood and eggs and chicken. I'm not quite big on red meat. But if you were to go to the grocery store and buy yourself a pack of, for example, free-range chicken breast, a pound or two might cost you anywhere from $8 to $12. With $8 to $12, you could buy quite a bit of fruits and vegetables, especially ones that are local and in season. You can buy 2 bags full of veggies that'll last you the entire week. So yeah, I would definitely debate that if somebody brought that to my attention, for sure.
Yeah. Although to the point of those critics, once you get away from making foods at home and you start buying packaged goods, that's when the expense probably kicks in.
And that's with any type of meal, right? Sure, you're going to treat yourself on the weekend and go out to a restaurant and buy yourself a meal for however much it costs. But when you make something at home, it'll be fresher. You'll know the ingredients that are in it. And a lot of those ingredients you're going to reuse, especially if it's herbs, spices, plant-based oils like avocado oil, coconut oil. You're going to have those things for quite some time. So yeah, there is a lot to consider, but overall, I believe that the cost is effective when you are making something at home and you're making something fresh.
Yeah, I completely agree with you because I try really hard to plan out our meals for the week, and with that, like trying to go grocery shopping once or twice a week. That way, I know like what my grocery bill is for the entire week, and then I feel like transitioning over to a more plant-based diet, I'm buying like some of the cheapest foods on the planet because we eat a lot of lentils, beans, oats, bananas, rice, things that you think about like being, really the cheapest foods. And like you were saying too, if we're ever in the grocery store together, you'll find me in the frozen section because I buy so many frozen fruits and vegetables as well because they last longer. Like you were saying, they're picked at their ripest. Honestly, it cuts down for me on a lot of meal prepping time when I'm cooking my meals, especially like buying chopped frozen vegetables. And then, of course, like you were saying, I love having frozen fruit on hand for like smoothies or oatmeal bowls or things like that. And And so I try to do a cost analysis kind of each week, because I do try to go grocery shopping so infrequently now. But I'm able to make our meals for the week, including weekends and snacks. I'm able to make each meal for less than $3 a meal.
Wow.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, because like you were saying, when you go out on the weekends, you buy like a $30 meal, and like you said, you don't know what the ingredients are. So I'm finding it too. Eating at home, I'm able to make a really delicious meal. I know everything that goes into it. I usually feel really good after eating it, and it's a lot more cost effective. And the same with buying those convenient foods that you're talking about. And like I said, it goes for any diet, no matter what you're eating. Those convenient foods are going to be more expensive, but they are a nice treat every once in a while. It's just a matter of trying to incorporate the whole plant-based foods as a central part of your diet and saving some of the fun stuff for, every once in a while.
Ashley, do you have any tips on how to get kids involved in this? I mean, as I mentioned, I have incorporated more plant-based foods into my diet this year, as has my husband. But the kids just don't want any part of that.
Yeah, that's really tough. And they might be able to speak to this more than me, but. So my sister is also vegan, her and her husband, and then she has two little ones. One is almost 2 and then one's 6. And they've been raised for the most part vegan, and so they don't know any different. So when, mom's cutting up veggies, they're right there, eating as many as they can get their hands on. The 2-year-old is like eating like little florets of broccoli, which is pretty remarkable because most 2-year-olds don't do that. And so it's kind of hard. I think the biggest thing is like you really need to make it fun and exciting. Because I feel like if they see you being like fun and excited about it, and have like all these cool like different vegetables and fruits chopped up and ready to go, that they can easily grab and get their hands onto, it makes it a little bit more enjoyable. But I don't have a lot of experience.
I don't have a problem here with the fruits and vegetables and the kids. It's more the beans, quinoa, some of the protein sources, tofu. They don't even like nuts. They're not allergic to nuts, so they could be eating nuts. They don't eat, they just don't want any of it.
I think when it comes to those type of foods, I'm going to put on my recipe developer hat here. You really got to spice things up because they can, especially when it comes to oats or lentils or quinoa, they could be quite bland on their own. And I've heard this from many people, and I've tasted it myself. And unless you really incorporate a lot of herbs and spices and flavors, you're not going to have much of a taste at the end of it. So, play with tastes that your children like. For example, if you're making quinoa, it doesn't necessarily only have to be savory. It can be sweet too, and sweet in a good way. So for example, I have a chocolate pudding quinoa recipe on my blog, and you wouldn't even know it's quinoa unless you were told. And it incorporates raw cacao powder. You could use coconut nectar or maple syrup, lots of cinnamon, lots of Himalayan salt, and you've got yourself a dessert, but it's actually a really healthy dessert. So with kids, you kind of almost got to trick them in a way by adding all these tasty herbs and spices and then telling them what's in it and then seeing if it sparked their taste buds a bit. But yeah, there's so many different ways of approaching those types of foods, but the best thing for me is just keep on adding flavors to them because naturally they are quite bland. Although they're really good for you, they need some additives so that they can be a little bit tastier.
I'm going to need that quinoa recipe. That sounds amazing. So I'm going to get to your blog.
Yeah, it's really tasty.
Speaking of recipes, do you have a favorite? I'll ask each of you if you have a favorite recipe.
For myself, I have so many favorites, but to keep it simple and easy, I just love smoothies. I've always been a smoothie lover, even prior to focusing on a more plant-based diet. But then when I started becoming more plant-based, I just started testing out all these different smoothie recipes and realized that this is so cool. I could literally put everything I love in a cup and make it so easy for myself, just blend away and add whatever I need to get my body going every morning. And especially, dealing with the mitochondrial disorder, wanting to make sure that I load myself with good fats and good proteins and fiber, and helping boost my energy with all these vitamins and minerals. I just really put as much as I can into a smoothie every morning, and I love it. So there's tons of smoothie recipes on my blog. One of my favorite is my green blueberry smoothie. So it's pretty much a handful of spinach, blueberries, almond or coconut milk, and a bunch of other cool stuff. But it's somewhere on the blog, and I do that one regularly. And of course, there's the traditional strawberry banana, you name it. I love them all.
Yeah, Faye, what are some of your favorite things to put into smoothies besides fruits and veggies? Do you have any like specific nuts, seeds, or powders or anything that you use?
For sure. So I love putting full fat coconut, like a scoop of it. So my traditional technique with smoothies is for every sweet based ingredient, for example, blueberries or raspberries, I like to add a fat and a fiber. So for the fat, I would do either a scoop of the coconut full fat or coconut oil or avocado. And then for the fiber, I would do flax or chia or hemp. So as long as there's those three components, then I feel it satisfies me. So sweetness, natural sweetness, of course, fiber, and good fat. So that kind of helps me develop a smoothie, especially if I'm just, playing around with different ingredients and kind of in a rush. I just toss any of those three categories and I'm good to go. How about yourself?
Nice. I'm definitely going to use the coconut milk idea because I feel like I love bananas, but sometimes I rely a little too heavily on them to make my smoothies creamy. I feel like that coconut milk will add like just an extra layer of creaminess that I probably didn't have before. So I love that. And then I'm the same with you. I love adding chia seeds and hemp seeds just for like a little extra fiber, omega-3s, protein, just to kind of give it a little extra boost. Yeah, those are definitely my favorites. So. And I love smoothies too. I think sometimes smoothies get a bad rap, but like you were saying, it's a great way to like kick off your day or just incorporate a bunch of fresh fruits and veggies into your diet. Yeah, I think they're wonderful. So there's a lot of great recipes out there besides that quinoa one, which Faye mentioned that I'm going to be making soon. I love making baked oatmeal for the week. So I end up batch cooking a lot of my meals for the week just to cut down on time and help save money as well. So baked oatmeal is a big one that I do. I love incorporating like pumpkin or like a pumpkin puree or some sort of, I even do coconut milk too, just to kind of give it a little bit more of a heartier texture and more, make it a little bit more satiating. So I like doing that. And then I don't know about you guys, but I've used an Instant Pot a lot and it has changed my life. It's just so nice to be able to cook like a huge one pot meal in a short amount of time. So it's kind of like a cross between a crock pot and a pressure cooker. So it just like speeds up the cooking time.
Yeah, I do not have one.
I don't have one either.
You don't?
No,
okay.
No.
I have the opposite. I have a slow cooker.
I have a slow cooker also, but no Instant Pot.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, slow cookers are awesome too. And it's essentially the same thing. It just speeds up the time. So if you're on a time constraint, yeah, you can use it. But I've been using mine a lot lately. And I posted a recipe recently. It's like an Instant Pot lasagna soup. So it's like lasagna, but it's like in the Instant Pot. Yeah. And it has noodles in it. And it's just like really hearty and it just is warm and cozy. And so that's been kind of nice to munch on.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah. And then kind of like what I was saying with like the more inexpensive ingredients, rice and bean bowls are a lot of times my go-tos for lunches. And then, incorporating maybe some tofu or jackfruit or something else, maybe some avocado or salsa to bulk it up a little bit. But that's another one of my go-tos.
You know what I find sometimes, and I don't know if this is just me. I mean, I'm 5'10", so I'm pretty tall, and I do eat. When I have, a plant-based meal, I'm not always full. And then I end up having a little snack afterwards. What might I be doing wrong? Am I just not eating enough of the grains or the plants? Or is there something that's good to add to the rices or legumes or whatever it is to ensure that one is satiated?
Now, I'm not a nutritionist, so maybe Ashley could speak better to this, but for myself, I find that incorporating good fats is always key for me. So no matter what I'm eating, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, I'm making sure that it has good fat in it. So for example, breakfast, I'm adding coconut oil or avocado oil to something, or nut butter. Lunch, I'm adding an avocado, or again, adding something with good fat. And then same with dinner, olive oil to salads, flaxseed oil, you name it. And then I, just to touch on what you've said about snacks, for me, snacks aren't a bad thing. Snacks are what keep my energy.
Snacks I'm snacking on aren't so good.
Okay, so that's a bit of a different story. But I actually enjoy snack time. Like, I look forward to my snacks throughout the day, and knowing that they're gonna help keep my blood sugar stable throughout the day and my energy levels up. So, making sure that they're a good quality snack, again, incorporating healthy fats. So almond butter with some apple slices doesn't hurt anybody unless you're allergic to nuts, then, change that up to sunflower butter or something. But yeah, fats are pretty important to me, and I find that they help keep me full, and again, that blood sugar is stable throughout the day. So you could try incorporating more of those and see how that goes.
Yeah. Okay. Ashley, did you have any tips?
Yeah, Faye, I'm right there with you. I think it's really important, like you were saying, because plant-based diets can tend to be super carb heavy if we don't plan it out. And so it's really important, like you were saying, to make sure we're pairing it with, additional proteins and having a great source of fat in there as well. I love what you're saying about snack time, because when I'm working with my clients specifically, we always talk about trying to pick, first of all, snacks that don't come in a package. So that typically ends up being like fruits or vegetables. But, oftentimes those aren't satiating enough. So like you were saying, like pairing it with some sort of nut or seed butter, a handful of nuts and seeds. I've become obsessed with sunflower seed butter. Like you were saying, I don't know what took me so long, but it's a great combination with bananas and fruits. And I've been loving it lately. But I think, and because plant-based diets tend to obviously be not as calorically dense as like more of a meat and dairy laden diet, just making sure that you're getting enough to eat as well, because oftentimes we do have to eat a little bit more than what we're used to kind of meet those requirements that previous diets met.
To round this up, I think I'd like to ask each of you what your opinion is on the concept of food as medicine.
So I definitely believe in that statement that food is medicine. But more than anything, I think it's a preventative. When you do any research, especially when you're looking at a plant-based diet, anything you type into Google that says benefits of blueberries, benefits of zucchini, benefits of spinach, things are going to pop up and they're going to say reduces risk of cancer, reduces risk of heart disease, reduces risk of stroke. You're always going to see that statement of reduces. And, it's too late if you have been suffering from things for like 50 years and not necessarily taking care of your health. And then all of a sudden you want to use a food as a quick fix as a medicine. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I think, yes, it can help you, but if you use it as a preventative from the time that you're young, as young as possible, as young as you can start eating and making these decisions on your own, whether you're a teenager or your 20s or 30s or whatnot. But if you use it as a preventative, I do believe that food is definitely medicine, and it can help. It can help you in so many different aspects of your overall health and well-being. And yeah, I could go on and on about this conversation about food in general and healthy food, but for sure, I agree with that statement.
I completely agree. In the sense that I feel like you and I are kind of like testaments of how like incorporating more plants into our lifestyle has really just completely change our well-being and our health and our future, really, and just our outlook on how important taking care of our bodies is. So aside from working with clients, I also work in nursing homes, and it's very eye-opening because I've seen the effect of what a chronic, westernized diet can have on the body and how debilitating it can be. And, people are coming to the nursing homes at younger ages. They're having strokes, heart attacks, like that sort of thing, a lot sooner now. It's just becoming a lot more prevalent, it seems like. And so I just think, food is an extremely powerful form of medicine. And it can be used not only to, prevent diseases, like you were saying, Faye. It can be used to reverse certain diseases. And then it's just really incredible. I feel like there's more testimonies and coming out of how powerful food is as medicine. And it's super empowering that, we can kind of take control of our health with something as simple as, putting different things into our bodies.
I completely agree. And I'm actually going to take it a step further too. I also believe it supports your mental health too, because when you're eating something that supports your body and how you feel, you feel less bloated, you feel less irritated, you feel less frustrated with your health. This supports how you feel mentally as well. You feel happier, you feel more engaging, more just happy in general. And your anxiety and your stress levels can be reduced if you know that your body feels better overall. So I feel that incorporating a healthy food or healthy lifestyle in general can support overall health and well-being.
And while it's not a quick fix, you can really do it at any age. At any age, it can be beneficial. Right, Ashley?
Absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, it's not a quick fix. It's not like this, 30-day program that you go on. I mean, it really is a lifestyle change, and it doesn't have to happen overnight. Kind of like what you're doing, Esther. Like, you've incorporated some more plants into your diet. Like, it can be just a gradual shift, 1% at a time. It doesn't have to be these huge leaps. And it can have profound effects on your lifestyle over time. So I think oftentimes we're like, oh, it's, eating plant-based is way too unattainable because we think about how difficult it is. But really, if you just start making these like small, subtle changes, one day, 1 week at a time, it really adds up.
And to add to that, and not limiting yourself too. So if you're somebody who's been an extreme carnivore or whatever for your whole life, and all of a sudden you feel that it wouldn't be possible for you to go plant-based or incorporate more plant-based foods because you're seeing it as another extreme. I think just taking baby steps and saying to yourself, okay, today is Monday and today I'm going to add, more fruits and veggies next to my steak
like
or whatever
Monday,
it is.
Right? Meatless Monday.
Yeah. Or taking a day or two out of the week and making it solely plant-based, just taking those baby steps to add these delicious and healthy fruits and veggies and legumes and grains and all this good stuff into your diet, and knowing that you don't have to create a label for yourself. You don't have to be a vegan. You don't have to be a carnivore. You don't have to be a vegetarian. Like, just be you and do what you feel makes you happy and what makes you healthy.
I completely agree, because I feel like we are stuck in this diet mentality. It's like, oh, I have to be like 100% plant-based. I can never eat these foods again. But it's not that at all. It's kind of what you're talking. You just take baby steps. It's not that you can never eat those foods again. Like, we really can eat whatever we want. It's just once you like get that ball rolling and you start eating these foods, it's like, oh, I feel a little bit better. My digestion's working better. I have a little more energy. It's kind of that positive reinforcement where I feel like you just feel good. And it's like, oh, those foods that I once loved just really aren't as appealing anymore. I can still eat them, but they're just not, as maybe as awesome as they once were.
And I think that's how it starts for a lot of people. They just start making these subtle changes, start feeling really great, and then incorporating more of them, because naturally when something makes you feel good, you want to do more of it.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And to help our listeners start, you guys have each contributed 3 different recipes to AFN, which I mentioned at the top of the podcast is going to be on our website. So for all you listeners out there who are thinking about starting or want some new recipes, go check out our website. And also, if you want to see what Fay and Ashley are doing, what's the best way how should they reach out to you or find your website?
Definitely. I always love connecting with people online. So you could check me out on Instagram and on my blog. The name on Instagram is wellnessfirst_net. So that's WELLNESS, the number 1, and then ST_net. And on Twitter at Fay Nights. And Fay Nights is spelled FAYKNIGHTS. And my blog, of course, is www.wellnessfirst.net, WELLNES, the number 1, ST.net.
And Ashley?
So you can find me on Instagram at Plant Centered Prep, and that's PLANTCENTERED PREP. And then that goes for my website as well. It's plantcenteredprep.com. And then you can email me or DM me. My email is ashley@plantcenteredprep.com. And same as Faye, I love connecting with people. It's super exciting.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys both for joining AFN today. Hopefully our listeners have learned a lot about plant-based eating and feel empowered to start their own journey if that's what they're choosing to do. And it's been wonderful having you.
It was nice chatting, Ashley.
Yeah, I know. It was nice chatting with you. I'm going to look you up on Instagram. I seriously cannot wait to make that quinoa recipe. So
it's really tasty. The secret's the canned coconut milk. So if you have a can of coconut milk at home, it's perfect to make it.
Sweet. Yes. Okay. And I do. So awesome.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks.
To all of you listening, I hope you found this podcast informative. If you haven't done it yet, please follow Alternative Food Network on Instagram or Facebook at Alternative Food Network. And if you have any comments or specific health and food related topics you'd like us to cover on a future podcast, please let us know by sending AFN a note on our contact page on our website at alternativefoodnetwork.com. Until next time, thanks for listening. All content provided or opinions expressed in this podcast are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice. Please seek advice from your doctor or other qualified healthcare practitioner.